Announcing the arrival of His Royal Highness, the Sultan Par Ridwan, accompanied by the Honourable Prime Minister of Malaysia, Menteri Besar Par Ridwan, Excellencies and para hadirin dipersilakan duduk. Please be seated. Thank you very much to the students from Sekolah Menengah Kebangsaan Raja Pemaisuri Bainun Ipoh and the choir from Kumpulan Selendang Perak, hailing from the Perak State Secretariat Office. Menghadap Duli Yang Maha Mulia, Paduka Seri Sultan Perak Darul Ridwan, Sultan Nazrin Muizzuddin Shah, Ibni Almarhum Sultan Azlam Muhibbuddin Shah Al-Maghfurullah. Ampun tuanku, beribu-ribu ampun sembah patik, mohon diampun. Patik bagi pihak penganjur the 7th World Conference on Islamic Thought and Civilization, WCIT, dengan penuh hormat takzimnya merafak sembah, menjunjung setinggi-tinggi kasih di atas limpah perkenan Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku bercemar duli berangkat ke majlis pada pagi yang penuh bermakna ini. Sesungguhnya, keberangkatan Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku amat besar ertinya kepada patik sekalian dan sudah tentu akan menjadikan lagi majlis pada pagi ini. Ampun tuanku, patik mohon limpah perkenan Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku untuk mengizinkan patik meneruskan sebuah ucapan patik dalam bahasa Inggeris. Honorable and distinguished guests, yang amat berhormat Datuk Seri Anwar bin Ibrahim, Honorable Prime Minister of Malaysia. Yang amat berhormat Datuk Seri Sarani Muhammad, Honorable Menteri Besar of Perak Darul Ridwan. Yang amat berhormat Datuk Seri Diraja Dr. Ahmad Zahid bin Hamidi, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister of Malaysia. Yang amat berbahagia, orang kaya Bendahara Seri Maharaja General Datuk Seri Diraja Tan Sri Dr. Muhammad Zahidi bin Haji Zainuddin, Pro-Chancellor University Sultan Azlan Shah. Yang berhormat Datuk Muhammad Zahir bin Abdul Khalid, Speaker of the Perak State Legislative Assembly. His Excellency Mr. Muhammad Yusuf Kala, 10th and 12th Vice President, Republic of Indonesia, and Your Excellencies. Yang berbahagia, Tan Sri Profesor Datuk Dr. Noordin bin Kardi, Pro-Chancellor, University Sultan Azlan Shah. Yang berbahagia, Profesor Tan Sri Datuk Sri Dr. Nur Azlan bin Ghazali, Pengurusi Lembaga Pengarah USAS Berhad and University Sultan Azlan Shah. Ahli Lembaga Pengarah USAS Berhad dan Universiti Sultan Azlan Shah. Yang berbahagia, Datuk Dr. Wan Zabri bin Wan Yusof, Vice Chancellor, Universiti Sultan Azlan Shah, generous sponsors and strategic partners, learned panelists, distinguished guests, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, please accord me the good opportunity to introduce myself. My name is K.T. Pillay, and I'm truly humbled to be the Master of Ceremonies for this international conference. Ampun Tuanku. We begin today's ceremony with profound gratitude to Almighty, the most merciful and compassionate, for granting us the opportunity to gather for this significant event, the 7th edition of the World Conference on Islamic Thought and Civilization, which is hosted by University Sultan Azlan Shah, USAS, since 2012. This year's conference brings together participants from 21 countries under the theme, Together We Stand, Muslim and Global Humanity. We extend a warm welcome to distinguished guests from the federal and state governments, esteemed panelists, presenters, and all delegates who travel from near and far. Selamat datang and a heartfelt welcome to the beautiful and enchanting state of Perak Darul Ridwan. Simply timely and meaningful because they're visiting during the Visit Perak year 2024 with this theme, Promising Perak. The WIC conference is held under the royal patronage of His Royal Highness Paduka Sri Sultan Perak. The primary aim of this conference is to provide a platform for regional and international leaders, scholars, intellectuals, professionals, and the public to engage in dynamic and rigorous exchanges of ideas and contemporary global issues. Ampun Tuanku. To commence the ceremony with blessings from Almighty, we are honored to have Muhammad Qayyim Nizar Sarimi, the winner of the International Quran Recitation Competition 2023, who will recite verses from the Holy Quran, especially from Surah Al-Imran, verses 101 to 105.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وكيف تكفرون وأنتم تتلى عليكم آيات الله وفيكم رسوله ومن يعتصم بالله فقد هدي إلى صراط مستقيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تهتدون ولتكن منكم أمة يدعون إلى الخير ويأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر وأولئك هم المفلحون ولا تكونوا كالذين تفرقوا واختلفوا من بعد ما جاءهم البينات وأولئك لهم عذاب عظيم صدق الله العظيم.
Ampun Tuanku, let's offer a special applause to Muhammad Qayyim, who read from the Braille book with perfection and ease. He is the winner of the International Quran Recitation Competition 2023. An outstanding and talented young man. May our international conference run smoothly and be blessed. Ampun Tuanku. It's now with great pleasure to invite the Vice Chancellor of University Sultan Azlan Shah and Conference Chair, Professor Datuk Dr. Wan Sabri Wan Yusof, to first seek permission and grace from His Royal Highness the Sultan of Perak Darul Ridwan to humbly present his opening remarks. Professor Datuk Dr. Wan Sabri Wan Yusof, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wa bihi nasta'in wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Thank you to Master of Ceremony. Menghadap Duli Yang Maha Mulia Paduka Seri Sultan Perak Darul Ridwan, Sultan Nazrin Muizzuddin Shah, Ibni Almarhum Sultan Azlan Muhibbuddin Shah, Al-Maghfurlah, Chancellor University Sultan Azlan Shah. Ampun tuanku, beri berubah ampun, sembah patik, mohon diampun. Patik mewakili Universiti Sultan Azlan Shah serta para hadirin merafak sembah menjunjung setinggi-tinggi kasih di atas limpah perkenan Duli Yang Maha Mulia tuanku bercemar duli berangkat ke 7 World Conference on Islamic Thought and Civilization pada hari yang berbahagia ini. Sesungguhnya keberkatan Duli Yang Maha Mulia tuanku amat patik sekalian sanjungi dan sudah tentunya akan menyerikan majlis pada hari ini. Ampun tuanku, patik mendapat sembah memohon ampun limpah perkenan Duli Yang Maha Mulia tuanku untuk menyampaikan sembah ucapan patik dalam bahasa Inggeris. Yang amat berhormat Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, Prime Minister of Malaysia. Yang amat berhormat Datuk Seri Sa'rani Muhammad, Menteri Besar of Perak. Yang amat berhormat Datuk Seri Diraja Dr. Ahmad Zahid bin Hamidi, Deputy Prime Minister of Malaysia. Yang amat berbahagia orang kaya bendahara Seri Maharaja Jeneral Datuk Seri Diraja Tan Sri Muhammad Zahidi bin Haji Zainuddin, Pro Chancellor of University Sultan Azlan Shah. Yang berhormat Datuk Muhammad Zahid bin Abdul Khalid, yang di-Ketua Perak State Assembly, Datuk Seri Diraja Dr. Zamri Abdul Qadir, Minister of Higher Education, Excellencies and foreign dignitaries. Yang berbahagia Tan Sri Profesor Datuk Dr. Nordin bin Kardi, Pro Chancellor University Sultan Azlan Shah. Yang berbahagia Tan Sri Datuk Sri Dr. Nur Azlan bin Ghazali, Chairman of USAS Berhad and University Sultan Azlan Shah Board of Directors. USAS Berhad dan University Sultan Azlan Shah Board of Directors. Distinguished guests, respected speakers and moderators, participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the University Sultan Azlan Shah, WCIT 2024, and in commemorations of 25 years of USAS establishment, allow me to welcome you to our 7th World Conference on Islamic Thought and Civilization. Participant presenters and speakers from more than 21 countries the world over converge and explore differing perspectives and share new insights and ideas. The main purpose of the conference is to provide a platform and avenue for regionals and world leaders, scholars and intellectual professionals and public to freely interact and articulate their thought in a dynamic and rigorous intellectual environment, conducive for exchange of ideas, all the purpose of addressing real and actual contemporary problems affecting the Muslims and the Muslim world. Initially started as and academic, conceptual, and theoretical discourses, the series soon evolved and took a shape of its own. It moved on to become international academic dialogue and finally intellectual and professional discussion, seeking pragmatic solution in order to establish a realistic program of action. While in the past, the WCIT has always involved literally the whole world, discussing on general issues affecting all people, all nations, but this time around, the conference is strictly focused and trained on the Muslim and Muslim world. In other words, WCIT 2024 is essentially about empowering the Muslim to rethink, re-evaluate, reinvent, and realign themselves with the world situation so that they stay relevant and mainstream. Time has come to a new world narrative, the narrative of friendships and partnership, one that augurs for collective ownership of world peace and harmony. Just as the non-Muslim world is expected to accept the Muslim as is, the Muslim too must not cover behind petty issues, trivialities, exorbitant claim. In the greater scheme of things, the Muslims should partake as partners and players in changing the world, in the global effort to harmonize the world. WCIT 2024 is a celebration of diversity and a convergence of humanity from Islamic perspective. It's hoped to be able to turn the global logics on its head with a new paradigm of unity of humanity. Together we stand, Muslim and global humanity, is a theme directed to the Muslim world in particular to accept the notions of single humanity and taking the lead of self-examination, self-introspection, and self-correction. Where they are strong, Muslims should be beacons and exemplar of the global ummah as rahmatan lil alameen. Where they are weak and unable, then they should readily admit and learn from others. Existential arrogance should be avoided at all costs. In light of the current circumstances, Muslims have to take the lead in addressing pressing and persistent misconceptions about Islam and misgiving about the Muslim. Not only do Muslims need to face up to such challenges for their own sake and for the sake of other religions, they also need to take up the leading roles of demonstrating to the world that religion, and in this particular case, Islam in particular, has the means to address the problems of social conflicts, and thereby calling upon other religions and communities to partake in the global efforts to resolve conflicts. As an academia, USAS has the unwritten mandate to take upon itself to boldly highlight and discuss global issues academically in non-partisan, non-polarizing, and non-denominational and non-political manners and ways. To the extent that the university is committed to this notion of future new world order, USAS will house the ASEAN Center for Islam, Global Peace, and Non-Violence. The setting up of this center was the brainchild of current Minister of Higher Education, who was then the Chief Minister of Perak, the Honorable Datuk Seri Diraja Dr. Zamri Abdul Qadir. And for the establishment of this center, it was first endowed with 3 million ringgit, courtesy of the current Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Datuk Seri Dr. Ahmad Zahid Hamidi. We thank both the Honorable Datuk Seri Ahmad Zahid and Datuk Seri Zamri Abdul Qadir. In closing, I wish all distinguished guests and esteemed speakers and all our participants a very warm welcome. I hope you find this conference intellectually stimulating and engaging, academically fruitful, spiritually fulfilling, and emotionally satisfying. Welcome to WCIT 2024, welcome to Perak, and welcome to Malaysia. We also would like to record our appreciation to the state government of Perak, especially to our Menteri Besar, Datuk Seri Sakrani Muhammad, for his support and encouragement to organize this conference. To all our sponsors, your sponsorships are so invaluable to USAS and the conference. On behalf of the university and the conference, I thank you. To my fellow staff, colleagues, and those who were directly involved in organizing this conference, you have worked so hard to make this event possible. It would never have been possible without your commitment and dedication. For that, I thank you. Menjunjung kasih Tuanku, ampun Tuanku. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much to the Vice Chancellor of University Sultan Azlan Shah and Conference Chair, Professor Datuk Dr. Wan Sabri Wan Yusof, for your descriptive speech delivery. Thank you. Next is with the greatest pleasure and honor to cordially invite Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, the Honourable Prime Minister of Malaysia, to deliver his prime ministerial address.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahillazi anzala ala abdihi alkitaba wa lam yaj'al lahu iwaja. Wa usalli wa sallim ala rasulihil karim wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Menghadap Bahduli Yang Maha Mulia Sri Sultan Perak Darul Ridwan Sultan Nazrin Muizzuddin Shah, Ampun Tuanku, satu penghormatan besar untuk bersama-sama meraihkan kehadiran Tuanku yang menjadi pendorong utama dalam majlis wacana segar seperti ini, dan izinkan Patik meneruskan untuk menyampaikan pandangan kepada rakan-rakan. Timbalan Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Diraja Zahid Hamidi, Menteri Besar Datuk Seri Syarani, Ahli Majlis Mesyuarat Kerajaan Negeri, tamu-tamu yang muliakan, Pro Chancellor, Naib Chancellor dan keluarga Universiti Sultan Azlan Shah, saudara-saudara yang dimuliakan. Alhamdulillah kita dapat bersama-sama, dan saya tentunya mendukung ikhtiar yang dimulakan sekian lama meneruskan wacana segar berbicara permasalahan Islam, umat, kebudayaan, tamadun, dan boleh diserasikan dengan tuntutan semasa dalam masyarakat pelbagai kaum, pelbagai agama dan dunia yang begitu rencam. We cannot survive and succeed without a reasoned discourse. We are living in a world termed as post-normal times, where there is chaos, contradictions and complexity, where there is deficit in moral values, in fact abandonment of moral principles, where politics believe in post-truth principles and devoid of ethical values, where the economy can be propelled with unbridled capitalism without care and concern for the environment or the welfare of the majority marginalized poor, urban poor, rural or in the rural heartland, We're living in a society where families have quite disintegrated. So the conference, of course, to me is timely. Not to clamor about change by reflecting on the experience of the past, to effect change in a meaningful manner, in a practical manner. I don't need to deliberate further on the issues of complexities and the unprincipled attempt by both in the political arena, on the economic and the cultural sphere, where we have lost humanity. Gaza is, of course, a classic example, where in the name of democracy, you can allow and condone total chaos, oppression of the worst kind known to mankind in recent times. So there's a challenge, therefore, to offer a viable, meaningful, effective alternative, and not to be in despair. So that is therefore something that we need to not only engage but strongly support. And I, of course, encourage with the presence of luminaries like Pak Yusuf Kala, who has been consistent and determined in promoting understanding and peace, even in more troublesome Muslim minority areas. My old colleague George Yeo, you remember George, we involved decades ago while trying to dismantle this concept of clash of civilization promoted strongly by Samuel Huntington. We were there to promote feast of civilizations. Civilizations can be a feast and not necessarily to be used to promote enmity, discord, and chaos. And this reminds me of the classic work, a very small, short article by the Arab Palestinian scholar Edward Said on the clash of ignorance. It's a very effective way of debunking or should I say devastating critique of that notion of clash of civilizations by Edward Said in his article, I think in the Atlantic, Clash of Ignorance. The problem that we confront in this world is complete ignorance. We assume that we know, but we don't. We try and attempt to deliberate most issues, engage in discourses out of prejudice, not out of empathy. The West, post-colonial period, must still retain the old precepts of the other, and therefore the misunderstanding, misinformation, and rejection of the other, what we term now Islamophobia. And we need to be blamed too when we talk about civilization. That's why I commend this university for trying to engage with all the others. How do you then survive and live in a society like a multiracial, multi-religious country in Malaysia and avoid discussing other religions, other cultures, other civilizations? And then demanding that the West must understand us. So I think it is an engagement that is required by us to get others to understand us and for us to understand them. That is why we have encouraged, other than conferences such as this, dialogue of civilizations, Islam and Confucianism, because it's very relevant, not only in Malaysia, but in this region. Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib, talking about knowledge and learning, and scholarship as lazzatul ma'rifah. There's a love for scholarship. You yearn to get the best, to understand and appreciate. As much as we have understood the injunction of the Quran, using in terms of epistemology, a very relevant, pertinent terminology, not just tolerance, but lita'arafu. Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha waja'alnakum shu'uban wa qabaila lita'arafu. It's not tolerance. Is learning from one another, is understanding one another, is appreciating the differences. Because the differences in terms of race or tribe or color is not of our own volition, but what was ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my contention is that we must have the courage and conviction to continue discourse, the discourse, in the spirit of lazzatul ma'rifah. To understand and appreciate and realize that this is a requirement to achieve not only peace and prosperity or even sustainability through reasoned discourse. T.S. Eliot, summarizing somewhat the same message. Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? Now, Ali bin Abi Talib differentiates between information, knowledge, and ma'rifah. We have this mushrooming of information. We have a problem now in the government trying to introduce some restrictions. Not necessarily popular, because those who believe in unbridled freedom means we have every right to express our views, regardless of the impact to the society. Even ignoring the fact that girls decided or forced, compelled to commit suicide because of this sort of harassment. So the challenge is therefore to place order and not unbridled freedom or capitalism, but to place values above the expression of individual freedom at the expense of peace and welfare of the society. May the conference live up to that spirit of lita'arafu and lazzatul ma'rifah. And I, without the need to apologize, no apologies, would also recommend to strongly address the issue of governance. Now, I must state that our chief guest, Your Highness, has impeccable academic credentials. So I don't welcome him just as a sultan or that's pertinent, but more so because rarely do you have, Your Highness, someone with your impeccable academic credentials addressing the audience. I think because of this, that what you have to say and advise is very, very pertinent and relevant indeed. That our country, as in most Muslim societies, require this message of understanding, of wisdom, beyond just tolerance. To understand that what we lack, what we have lost in our societies today is the meaning of justice, deficit in values, deficit in the values, therefore poor governance, and lack of compassion. We decide what is right, what is wrong, what is just, what is not. Whether we have empathy to the plight of the poor based on interests, values, or parties, not on the principles of justice and humanity. And if you understand the Islamic message, the Khair Ummah that we heard, it is beyond race and creed. May Allah give us strength. In front of Your Highness, I've decided to shorten my speech because we are here to look forward to his address. And I must reiterate this point without exaggeration, that we are blessed, Your Highness, with your presence and your wisdom. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much once again to the Honorable Prime Minister of Malaysia, Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, for the Prime Ministerial Address. Ampun Tuanku, indeed we are all truly honored yet humble with the presence of His Royal Highness, and it is now with great pleasure to invite Vice Chancellor of University Sultan Azlan Shah, Professor Dr. Wan Sabri Wan Yusof, to entreat with utmost graciousness His Royal Highness Sultan Nazrin Muhyiddin Shah Ibni Almarhum Sultan Azlan Muhyiddin Shah Al-Makfurullah to grace the ceremony with His Royal Highness keynote address and subsequently declare the 7th World Conference on Islamic Thought and Civilization 2024 to officially commence. Ampun Tuanku.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And once again, welcome to the 7th installment of the World Conference on Islamic Thought and Civilization. It always gives me great pleasure to return to this conference, and today is no exception. This international gathering is hosted by University Sultan Azlan Shah, known in Arabic as Jamiah Azlaniyah, and named in honor of my father, Sultan Azlan Muhyiddin Shah, Marhum Al-Makfurullah. I have returned to this conference over the years to speak on topics from global peace to our future world, and most recently, on sharing our humanity. It is without fail an exciting, energizing occasion, a conference that tackles the very biggest questions of our present moment, bringing together great minds to pursue solutions for the future. But before we look to the future through the lens of this year's conference theme, I want to take a moment to look back. For this year's conference marks some very special anniversaries. Firstly, I wish to offer my congratulations to the university in this, their Silver Jubilee year. 25 years ago, 25 years ago, our hosting institution was founded as the Darul Ridwan Islamic College at the behest of my father. Beginning life as a college with a temporary campus in Ipoh, the institution rapidly flourished, graduating to a permanent campus in the royal town of Kuala Kangsar in 2009, and achieving first university college and then fully fledged university status by 2016. My father was there for much of that journey, officiating the openings of both the temporary campus in 1999 and the permanent one a decade later. I know how proud he would be to see the university bearing his name celebrate its silver jubilee. I too am immensely proud. This university is truly a symbol of progress, a heartening reminder of what can be achieved through a combination of vision, hard work, and dedication. I hope all of you enjoy celebrating this remarkable achievement. Today also marks another personal milestone. For this gathering of WCIT marks 10 years, almost to the day, since I first spoke at one of these events. In August 2014, at the second ever WCIT, I spoke about the rise and fall of civilization, the contemporary state of Muslim affairs. I am, of course, thrilled that the conference is still flourishing and has made a name for itself globally. But a milestone such as this one also prompts one to reflect on how much progress has been made in the intervening years. What has changed for the better? What hasn't changed at all? And how do we ensure that we are all moving together in the right direction? A decade ago, I addressed this conference about the disproportionately high levels of humanitarian suffering in Muslim majority countries, about poverty, displacement, and political instability. In particular, I highlighted the United Nations Human Development Report of 2014, which revealed that only 1/3 of member countries of the OIC had high or very high levels of human development. There were, at that time, more member countries with low human development than with high and very high combined. The numbers certainly threw into sharp relief the suffering and hardship experienced by so many of our fellow Muslims around the world. On the United Nations Human Development Index, HDI, I have some positive news to share. In the decade since I first addressed this conference, the number of OIC member countries with low human development has decreased, while the number with high and very high development has increased. There are now 26 member countries in the highest two categories and only 20 in the lowest meaning that the balance appears to be tipping slowly but surely in the right direction. And yet, the same UN Human Development Report that reveals these recent figures also contains a dire warning. Because while human development recovery is proving highly unequal. The gap between countries with the lowest and the highest development levels is widening, with countries at the lower end of the index at risk of being left behind. What's more, the latest report shows that global hunger levels have reversed in recent years, with undernourishment reaching levels not seen for over a decade. The world has seen reductions in civil liberties, especially for women. And these particular measures were declining even pre-COVID. Forced displacement is going up at record levels, and civilian casualties as a result of war are on the rise after years of decline. When I addressed this conference 2 years ago, there was a prevailing sense of optimism. The world was emerging, albeit slowly, from the darkest days of the pandemic. We were reuniting as a species, sharing our humanity, as the conference theme so aptly put back then, gathered in the same rooms once again. But less than 2 years later, I must confess, that sense of optimism has been dampened quite considerably. It is not only that the UN report findings shed light on the uneven recovery taking place around the world. Since October 2022, 2 major conflicts affecting Muslim majority populations have broken out. The Sudanese civil war, and of course, the conflict in Gaza today. Meanwhile, the war in Ukraine, which began in early 2022, has continued into a 3rd year, inflicting significant and prolonged hardship on the country's citizens. Across these global conflicts, innocent civilians of many faiths, Muslim and non-Muslim, including thousands of women and children, are bearing the brunt of the suffering. Killed, wounded, forced out of their homes, and in many cases, now facing intensifying food shortages. I pray for peace to prevail in all conflict-torn regions of our world, and I hope all those of you here today will join me in doing the same. In light of the HDI trends and the terrible conflicts I have spoken about just now, it seems only fitting that since the last gathering of this conference, our focus today should once again be on humanity. This year's theme, as you know, is Together We Stand, Muslims and Global Humanity. In what remains of my speech, I want to focus on that first word, together. With the gap between the richest and poorest countries growing, and with international conflicts on the rise, it is clear that even as a global Muslim community, our Ummah, we are not currently united in a shared experience. We are not standing together. Some of us thrive, while others, even at this very moment, are suffering dreadful hardships and deprivation. And so today, I want to reflect on how we can help some of the most vulnerable members of our international communities. In particular, those living in poverty and hardship, as well as children from all backgrounds. I say this: we do not stand together until all of us are standing. We must not be content to leave a single member of our global community behind. Indeed, it is our duty to help. For as the Quran teaches us, if anyone saves a life, it will be as if he had saved all of humanity. The Quranic message here is unapologetic and universal. It is about all of humanity, regardless of faith or creed. As Muslims, we are enjoined to help everyone to stand together and to stand together with everyone. So we must take action, and soon, to help vulnerable Muslims and non-Muslims alike before it is too late. Now, I believe there are already success stories to be shared in this area. There is no shying away from the seriousness of the international situation today, or the worrying downward trends I highlighted earlier on. But there are many reasons for hope, and these, I think, are as important to acknowledge as the warning bells that tell us we are charting the wrong course. When I addressed this conference 10 years ago, I spoke of the shockingly disproportionate share of the global Muslim population who live in abject poverty. At that time, the figure, based on the 2014 UN report, was around 80%. While there have been some improvements over the past decade, the story today is not much better. Well over half of the countries in the low human development category of the UN's latest report are OIC members. Muslim majority populations are still vastly overrepresented among the world's poorest. And just as concerningly, studies indicate that even in countries with very high human development, Muslim populations are often living with deprivation. In the United Kingdom, for example, around half of the Muslims are estimated to be living in poverty, compared to only 18% of the population as a whole. It is not right that so many of our Muslim brothers and sisters around the world are living without the resources to cover their basic day-to-day needs. We cannot stand together if some of us are fighting to simply survive. Fortunately, Islam has inbuilt mechanisms to redress these imbalances and provide for those in need. Charity, generosity, philanthropy. These are enshrined in the very foundations of our faith. There is a well-known hadith that says, "He is not a believer whose stomach is filled while his neighbor goes hungry." And so, we have many Islamic channels through which to ensure that all of our neighbors are well fed. Zakat, or the obligatory tax for Muslims to achieve social justice through the distribution of wealth, is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. And additional mechanisms such as waqaf or endowments and sadaqah or voluntary charity promote giving as a core principle of Islamic life. Estimates suggest that global zakat contributions alone could be worth as much as $1 trillion each year. $1 trillion. Think about this. That is truly an astonishing figure. So, given the size of that figure, how is it that so many of our Muslim brothers and sisters are still struggling even to subsist? Problem is partly one of scale. Yes, Islamic social finance is worth a vast amount of money. But the scale of the poverty we seek to combat is vast as well. It has numerous complex and overlapping causes, including war, displacement, extreme weather, and famine. Such crises are highly challenging to address. There is a global gap between humanitarian development need and funding, and Islamic finance is not exempt from this. Moreover, while the value of Islamic social finance globally is very large, OIC member countries together raise only a modest fraction of that sum, a little under $200 million, or around 0.02% of the higher end estimates for the global value of zakat. What this means is that the countries with the greatest need have the least access to the resources they require to alleviate want and suffering. We must do more to mobilize the funds raised through Islamic social finance mechanisms, and I am delighted that there is already momentum in this area. More and more digital and fintech platforms are enabling Muslims around the world to channel their compulsory zakat and voluntary sadaqah donations towards the causes that matter most to them. And this, I hope, will lead to an increasing redistribution of funding to support those most in need. The vast and challenging nature of the problem, however, also calls for action from big players in the finance industry. Individuals alone can make an enormous difference, but we need large-scale coordinated efforts if we are to truly eradicate the acute, multi-dimensional poverty being suffered around the world. I am proud that Malaysia has been a member of the Islamic Development Bank for 50 years, almost since the bank's foundation in 1975. As this is a prime example of a large-scale financial organization with humanitarian support built into its very structure. Such institutions can mobilize large sums of money and partner with other high-profile organizations to grow the pool of development resources, as with the IDB's Lives and Livelihoods Fund. This is a fund that seeks to establish sustainable routes out of poverty. It focuses on sustainable development for local communities, supporting healthcare infrastructure and agricultural projects so as to give people the tools to help themselves. Writing on poverty and the challenges of humanitarian development, the chairman of the IDB recently quoted the Indian philosopher and economist Amartya Sen. It is a quote that for me resonated so strongly with the theme of this year's conference that I felt compelled to share it here. Professor Sen states that poverty is not just a lack of money. It is not having the capability to realize one's full potential as a human being. Poverty does not merely deprive people of material possessions, but eats away at optimism, at opportunity, and even at humanity itself. If we are to stand together as a global Muslim community, the Ummah, we must find ways to help our fellow Muslims around the world to stand tall and proud, raised out of want and suffering, to realize their full potential. As Muslims, after all, we have one kalimah, one qibla, and one Quran. Our faith unites us through these core foundations, urging us all to stand together. United in this way, even the poorest and most vulnerable can become strong. So, given the sheer number of Muslims across the globe, and given the wealth and privilege that many of us do enjoy, we should be able to come together in strength and solidarity to shape the policies that affect the Muslim world and to make a positive impact on the whole of humanity. And yet, at the present moment, we have been unable to do anything to help the millions of Muslims suffering in poverty, or even to help the poor people of Gaza. Going forward, we must do more to ensure that our collective wealth, our collective power is used to support those who are less fortunate, for the good of those individuals, for the well-being and strength of the Ummah, and ultimately for humanity itself. For I firmly believe that we as Muslims have a powerful and positive contribution to make to the global community. We must lift up our fellow Muslims so that they too can help to make the world a brighter, better place for everyone in it. Before I finish, there is one other vulnerable group I wish to highlight, and the future of global humanity quite literally depends on them. I am, of course, talking about children. Children of all faiths and backgrounds are disproportionately affected by poverty, while they comprise only a third of the global population. They represent half of those subsisting on less than the bare minimum. At the present moment, children are also suffering disproportionately in humanitarian crises and conflict situations. There are currently 4 million children in Sudan facing acute malnutrition. In Ukraine, the United Nations estimates that 3.5 million children are living under severe to catastrophic levels of need. And in Gaza, half of the 1.7 million people displaced from their homes are children. These children are losing their families, their homes, their loved ones, and all too often, tragically, their lives. Even those who survive through conflict and famine are at risk of losing their futures. Because all too often, children living through these situations do not have access to education. Almost all children in Sudan are now out of school. And in Gaza, the latest UN estimate suggests that at least 80% of schools have been destroyed in the war. Indeed, the scale of the destruction is such that scholars worldwide have now coined a shameful new word in our human lexicon: scholasticide. Scholasticide. In the world as a whole today, nearly 250 million children are out of school, a staggering figure. And due to the correlation between poverty and poor school provision, many of those millions are in the Muslim world. Despite global progress on achieving gender parity, there are still a disproportionate number of young girls missing out on education in regions in crisis, with female students 2.5 times more likely to be out of school in countries experiencing conflict. In my first ever speech at this conference a decade ago, I spoke about the vital importance of education and the shortfalls in this area across OIC countries. If 10 years later, I sound like a broken record, it is because we, as a global community, have a broken record of providing a solid educational foundation for all of our young people. But we can make progress in this area, and I know that because we have already made progress. A sustained focus on female education here in Malaysia has resulted in a significant increase in the percentage of women enrolled in tertiary education, from only 10% in the 1950s to over 50% today. World Bank projects in Egypt and Nigeria have increased teacher training and retention and improved educational attainment in these countries. Across the Islamic world, literacy rates have improved dramatically over the past 30 years or so, with 25 Muslim majority countries achieving literacy rates of over 90%, well above the global average as of 2018. Many of the problems facing our world, the global community, and the Muslim Ummah are complicated, deep-rooted, and difficult to solve. They stem from a complex web of political, environmental, and financial causes, and they require more than funding if a solution is to be found. But the educational success stories I have just cited indicate that in this sphere at least, investment does yield returns. And we must invest in opportunities for children around the world because they are the problem solvers of tomorrow. We must stand up for every child's right to an education, even in conflict and crisis situations. And we must remember that this is about ensuring a brighter future for humanity. Those of you who were here at the last gathering in 2022 may remember that on that occasion, I ended with the words of a certain song. I know that there have been fewer opportunities for singing in today's speech so far. There is no shying away from the fact that the world feels more troubled, not less, than it did 2 years ago. We are at risk of moving in the wrong direction, away from progress, and when that happens, it is the vulnerable who suffer disproportionately. Those already lacking in the basic resources for day-to-day survival, and the children deprived of the opportunity to make their mark on the world. This year's conference is all about standing together, both as Muslims and as a global human community. And so, I felt that it would be remiss of me to strike the same celebratory note that I did last time when millions of people, including so many of our Muslim brothers and sisters around the world, are facing increasing hardship in war and poverty. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the Muslim Ummah is like one body. When any part is in pain, the whole body is in pain. Across the globe, whether in Gaza or Sudan, our Muslim brothers and sisters are in pain, and we must feel pain. We must feel that pain together with them. And we must recognize the pain of non-Muslims too, in conflict situations like Ukraine, but also everywhere else in the world, as we strive for a truly global understanding of humanity. May this motivate us to reach out our hands and to help others to their feet, so that we can at last all stand together on the brink of a brighter future. Countering the evils of poverty and conflict is no easy task, but I hope that all of you, like me, can see there are reasons for optimism. There are success stories amid the challenges. We have made progress before, and we will make progress again. Particularly in the sphere of education, if we invest, then we will see results, enabling our global community to stand together, not only for today, but for all our tomorrows as well. As another well-known song goes, I believe that children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. I know that today's conference will help to lead the way back to the path of progress. I wish you all a productive and enlightening time at this conference. Thank you.
Ampun tuanku, patut sekalian terima kasih tuanku. Let us offer a stand